dinner after this and drinks, so out in the lawns, and there'll be enough time to chat. Could I please ask you to settle down? That's okay.
How do you start an iconic movement? mannerism would say it's all about refinement and richness of invention. Classicism would say it's all about form and craftsmanship. Impressionism might answer, it's all about capturing the magic of every single moment. While Surrealism would find all of this quite, well, surprising. After all, it's about creating the icon of a new movement. Welcome to Forwardism, the new BMW 7.
Born within a depth, never reserved for a few, greater for being given. It lives in prizing bonds over possessions, a large-heartedness that elevates even as it uplifts. Shiv's glassware, made of great character.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for being this disciplined to come back. And at the end of these two sessions, there'll be drinks and dinner out on the lawn. So may I please get your attention? Just for those of you who came in late, a huge welcome again to everyone's guests here, guests that have come through us, guests who are Shiv Nadar's Foundation's guests, BMW, DLF, Shivas. All together, we are a community of people that love ideas and conversation. Thank you very much for being here to celebrate the creation of Ignition, which is a platform that will take us into diverse worlds, keys to different worlds. And I'm really, really happy to be partnering with Shiv Nadar Foundation. They're somebody that really believes in the transformative power of education. I've said that earlier, but they really support enlightened citizenship, and that's what makes them fantastic partners. Of course, many of you are familiar with their schools here, and in Chennai, they've started, they have a big university, an engineering college, an institute of excellence. And one fact about them that caught my eye is that apart from the $1.1 billion they've spent on education, they've spent 80 crores in scholarships, and they've touched more than 36,000 students, 150,000 students through Vidya Gyan, which also supports underprivileged children and enhances their education. So a big round of applause to them for that. I'd also like to thank BMW. You saw this film. You know, they're part of an evening where right now at this very next session, we're going to be discussing the shape of our present and our future. And they combine that desire for excellence, efficiency, luxury, of course, but sustainability. And they call that forwardism. They also support the arts and conversation, and we're very proud to partner with them. Shivas, who of course needs no introduction because we all know how animated we are because of them. So thank you to Shivas. And Brand Avatars, fantastic partners. And I'd again just like to give a shout out to our own team, Aditya Puri, my husband and partner, Pratik, Dibyangi, Valmik Kabir, everyone who brings this team together. Hema Ramachandran, Brand Avatar founder, fantastic partner to be with. So thank you, everybody, and DLF for giving us this wonderful venue. Next up is a session which we are probably going to be discussing for all of our lifetimes. Because in the last 3 months, a power has been unleashed amongst all of us that we don't even begin to understand. The creators of it themselves, you know, someone like Elon Musk, says that this, which is generative artificial intelligence, is possibly more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Sam Altman, someone else who's at the heart of it, founder of OpenAI, says that they're a little bit scared of it. And in the last week itself, more than 1,000 people who are at the heart of the community, including the founders of Apple, Imad Mushtaq, who's the founder of Stability AI, cutting-edge people, technologists, have written an open letter saying that we need a moratorium on this till we understand it and till we understand how to frame it so that it remains aligned with humanity. We're going to be discussing the implications of this power that has been unleashed between us. For that, we have a fantastic speaker list. But before that, I just want to leave some facts with you. In the last 1 month, PwC has released a report which says that AI is in the next 7 years, not in the far future, going to release $15 trillion of new productivity, which, just to give us perspective, is more than the combined GDP of China and India put together. McKinsey says that 300 million jobs are going to be displaced. There are others, and I can keep saying this to you, but 80% jobs are going to need to either adapt or are going to absorb AI, and it is an invisible presence in our lives. So how are we supposed to think about it? It has ushered us into an era beyond what we know of ourselves, so we call it the post-human. Are we already post-human? It redefines what we know as human creativity, possibly as human consciousness. So to really unpack all that and why there's so much fear and excitement about the potency of this power, as I said, we have a fantastic speaker list. But before that, we're going to have a short film that for those of us who've not already tried it, will give us an indication of what this power is and how much it mirrors human beings already. So just have a watch, and then we'll have the speakers on stage.
Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece?
Nigga, please.
Dark and stormy night when Lisa's world came crashing down.
How can you tell the difference between dogs and trees?
Because dogs bark and trees don't.
Why is it funny?
Because it's a pun.
Panic is spreading across the globe in the wake of the arrival of alien spaceships.
It scares the hell out of me. Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes.
Picture this, I'm a bag of dicks, put me to your lips, I am sick, I will punch a baby bear in his shit, give me lip, I'ma send you to the yard, get a stick, make a switch, I can end the conversation real quick. I am crack, I ain't lying, kick a lion in his crack, I'm the shit, I will fall off in your crib, take a shit. We the best, we will cut a frowny face in your chest, little wench, I'm unmentionably fresh, I'm a mensch, yeah correct, I will walk into a court while it wrecks, screaming yes, I am guilty, I am death. Hey, you wanna hear a good joke? Nobody speak, nobody get choked.
So barely 5 years ago, when this was still a fledgling, potency, there were some artists that began to engage with it because they believed that we are already in an era of being post-human, and that since technology shapes us so much, rather than just being impacted by it, we should engage with it. We should have a dialogue with it. And so the first two speakers that we have on stage today are at the cutting edge of art and AI. There are just about 100 artists in the world who were already using this as a tool before it came upon us like a tsunami. And two of them are here today. So I'd like to call on stage Harshit. Where are you? Please welcome Harshit on stage. Harshit is a graduate of the MIT Media Lab, but he's also, as I said, one of the most pioneering AI artists who uses code to create art. There's Karthik Kalyanaraman, who is the curator of 64-1, an art collective that has been thinking deeply about the space of AI and art, human consciousness, and creativity. So please welcome Karthik. And joining us all the way from LA and from Paris, we have with us Ajit Singh, who is an adjunct professor at Stanford University. He's a big investor in AI and healthcare and has been deeply involved with AI for the last 30 years. So Ajit will be joining us from LA. We also have Amit Kumar Pandey, who has been at the cutting edge of robotics and AI. He's made the journey from Bihar to the post-human, where he was Chief Technical Officer at Hanson Robotics, the creators of Sophia, which ironically, it's a white social robot that got citizenship in Saudi Arabia, one of the most human robots. He also was the creator and released Pepper, which is one of the most mass-produced humanoid robots to be used in social contexts. He's been with SoftBank, he's part of EU, and is very, very involved with creating AI and robotics in a social context, responsible AI, very optimistic about it. So we have, as I said, a fantastic panel. Please welcome them. Thank you for joining us. Ajit, I wanted to start with you. You're one of the signatories to this letter that I was speaking about, which asks for a moratorium on AI for the next 6 months. And like Elon Musk said, it's like nuclear weapons. So, do we need disarmament or do we need regulation? Why are we so scared of this? So before you even tell us why we are so scared of it, will you evoke for us the sheer potency of what has been released and why you signed this letter? Ajit, just hold on 1 second. Can all of you hear him? Okay. Ravi, could you just raise the volume because we can't hear him very well here. Sorry, Ajit. And just if you can speak closer to your mic. Yeah, please carry on.
Is that okay? Is that clear?
Yeah, please carry on.
Perfect. So my reason for signing the letter was very straightforward. It's a concern about bad actors. So my concern is not about AI per se, that AI will get so intelligent and so destructive that it will take over. That's not my concern. My concern is strictly bad actors and the speed with which bad actors can get to use this. So if bad actors get access to nuclear weapons, for example, that's a long journey. Nuclear weapons have been around for 70 years and they have not yet found their way to bad actors. So the speed at which bad actors can get to something which is dangerous is very high. It's a very fast speed for AI because it's mostly open source, open domain anyway. And the nature of damage it can cause very quickly if bad actors get access or bad actors choose to utilize it. That was my primary concern. My concern is not the inherent power of AI itself.
Okay, so Ajit, I'll come back to you. I want to bring Harshit in here, and I'll take in Amit in a bit. Harshit, one of the things that has been described is that when it was just AI was being used by rules and things, it was a different being. But everything that you saw on stage right now, I'm sorry, are you able to hear me? Because I have a lot of echo, Ravi. Yeah? Okay. Okay. So every image that you saw on screen was generated by me, I mean, that's the power that this new AI has, that you can create those things. Some of the other images you saw, the deep fakes, all of it is like something that a child can do, But you, Harshit, started engaging with this 5 years ago. when you said that we are already cyborgs, we are already in the post-human. So from that to now, how has your thinking changed? And why did you say that we are already in the post-human?
Yeah, I mean, so I started with it actually much before 5 years. It's almost been a decade since I've been engaging with AI and thinking about its implications to society mainly, I think. And that's the nature of inquiry for me with AI. It's not necessarily about just image making, but actually sort of the things you touched upon, right? Things like filter bubbles, things like data colonialism that inherently sort of are a result of having this ability to act collectively on such large amounts of data. And I think the idea of why I feel that we are already in sort of this post-human space is pretty much because of that, right? Like if I ask any of us here to spend a couple of days without our phones, it's going to be impossible. And the phones are not even like smart yet to the extent that you could enhance them with things like ChatGPT, et cetera, right? So I think just for us, not to run away from the fact and think, I mean, I really dislike sort of this way of thinking that they're more dangerous than nukes, et cetera. I think because the real dangers are much more present and they're much more rooted in the ideas of how the sort of thinking around reality, et cetera, is going to change and what the idea of truth is going to mean. And it's only with sort of a collective engagement, and that's where I see the role of art to happen, right? Like, because like you said, I was studying technology, and at some point I realized that our relation with it is far beyond just an optimization problem or a problem of just using it to solve certain problems, right? It's much more intertwined in our lives, and the only way we are going to sort of build a more intimate relationship with it is through sort of the cultural, artistic engagements.
So, you know, Harshit, I'll come back. I don't know if just the film or, like I said, your own engagement has said, yes, it can generate images, but we've all used ChatGPT. It can complete your thoughts. It can synthesize information. It can be used for bias. So one of the really big debates going on around it, even forget what it can do. There's a sense that it could become conscious. It could break its codes. But at the heart of it is an idea of control, that who controls this. So Karthik, that's why I want to bring you into it.
Okay, yeah,
that,
absolutely.
you know, you've been looking at the entire framework of this, of how to frame it. So, you know...
No, I think that is the key question, absolutely, Shoma. I mean, it's not about whether AI is suddenly going to become sentient or conscious, but today, right now, who is controlling information? Who is controlling these algorithms? Who is controlling the data sets? Let me just quote a statistic to you. I think 90% of significant AI work is all done in 7 companies. I'll name them for you, and just think about it a little bit. Microsoft, Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Baidu, Tencent. How many countries are represented? 2. So, I mean, this stuff has geopolitical consequences. And why is all this research happening there? It's not because the smartest people go there. It's simply because they have the largest source of data sets, and data is like oil for AI. You need enormous amounts of data to get these algorithms to do anything useful. And that's the reason why they dominate. So absolutely, control, who controls the flow of information, those are the real policy issues, really.
Yeah. You know, I mean, also the issues of bias, because already, I don't know how many of us have seen the film Social Dilemma. We all know today that because of the way the algorithms, the way the attention economy works, we're all trapped in this dopamine loops, that today all our democracies, all our politics, everything is so polarized just because of social media. And now we have something even more powerful coming in. So we're going to look at some of those things, but I wanted to bring Amit in here now. As I said, Amit is someone who's actually been working at the social application of robotics and AI. Ravi, have we lost them? Okay. So Amit, I wanted to ask you, like I said, that you've helped create Sophia, Pepper. When I spoke to you, you were very optimistic about the power of this generative AI and the many things that it can do. So before we go back into the danger and the rabbit hole, tell us about the opportunities for the human race that has been unleashed.
Yes, so I think we have to see everything from a perspective which is human-centered perspective. And there we will be able to see the potential of kind of right kind of AI. They can be also providing the physical support, being companion, reducing loneliness of the people. So I can simply list lots of applications. But this is again to say that let us see things from the different perspective and then try to see that what are the challenges, and then we will be handling them one by one.
But Amit, just before I ask anyone else, you didn't sign this letter, but are you at least worried about the danger of this? Who do you think should control it? Are you comfortable with the way it has been unleashed into the world?
Yeah, so there I think I am along the thought process of Professor Ajit Singh also, that who should have the access is the key, and it is not only that okay, people are doing something intentionally bad by using this, but also if people are innocent enough to use it as a tool, and they don't know how to use this tool, and they don't know how the tool is functioning or what is the mechanism behind that. So there can be even some concerns or some unintentional things which might happen as well. So that's where I think the main question is that for me the main question is not that should we stop advancement of AI or not. It is the question that when should it be available as a tool to the community, to the people. And that's where we have to really figure out the right timing and the right mechanism so that people are really able to use it in the way it is intended to be used.
Yeah, of course, Amit, I'll cut you there just to share with you. You said the word about intention. There are two halves of this conversation. One is already the potency and danger, as I said, opportunity and danger of it now. And then there's a lot of discussion in the, in the tech community about what it can potentially do. Between ChatGPT 3, which we've all used, and the next ChatGPT 4, the parameters it is using is now 10 trillion. And it could just go more and more. So there is discussion about emergent behavior, whether it'll become, it'll cross the Turing test and become human. And Amit earlier said that we should keep the switch of it in our hands. So, Karthik, you want to come in there?
I just wanted to add a little point about the difficulty we face. We've made the parallel between nuclear proliferation and AI a little bit. Nuclear proliferation can be tracked. Plutonium can be tracked around the world. We can see where proliferation is happening. The problem with AI is you can't really control it. It's just information. America, of course, has been trying to control China from buying AI chips. Recently, it's turned out that China has been buying these chips anyway through subsidiaries. So the issue is also uncontrollable proliferation to rogue actors is a serious threat. And then it really requires a kind of cross-institutional collaboration between the government, between research institutions, between philosophers, and so on to even tackle this problem.
Right. Harshit, I'm just going to come to you. Ajit, I wanted to bring you in here. This fear, one is that he said bad actors. But in my mind, when I was working with it, the fear is that whether our children are using it, whether we are using it, whether political power uses it, whether, there are two models. Somebody's released it, Stability AI, Imad Mushtaq has released open source to the community, whereas Microsoft and others are keeping it in their control. In both cases, where the governments control it, we're at the receiving end of something which has been designed by others. Then there's the other fear that can it cross over and take over human beings, colonize human beings. Ajit, what is your thought on that?
So, two parts. So, number one, I do not deny any of the power that AI already has. So, I've been in the field now close to 30 years. My PhD was in 1988, so it's some 35 odd years. While the basic science of AI has not changed, the fact that computation is very inexpensive and the amount of data that's available is humongous, the power of AI is expressing itself for everything you talked about. I want to take just maybe a minute to talk about the limitations of what's possible today, so that we overcome some of this maybe irrational fear. So AI today, even generative AI, actually doesn't know anything per se. It is simply a statistical model of what a human or a collection of humans are likely to say in response to a question. or in response to a prompt, or in response to a brushstroke. Okay. So at best, it's a stochastic parrot. It's a statistical parrot. It's not a system that is conscious today. Okay. Now the question is, can it become conscious? So if you take the example of a self-driving car, it's got about 2 million miles of learning with about 12 sensors. So camera, radar, LiDAR, etc., etc. And the best it can do today is drive in a straight line and hopefully not have rain and storm and lightning and so on and so forth, then it performs fine. To get to a human level of performance, you need probably 300 million miles of learning. And while you and I are able to drive just fine, even in India or Italy or wherever, in less than 3,000 miles, we've got about 50 million years of evolution that created this very highly complex multi-layered brain, which has this thing called prefrontal cortex, which has this whole notion of self-awareness. So is the brain aware of itself, the brain aware of the brain itself? To reach that multi-layer architecture with a formed AI such as generative, there is not even a model for it. Right? So when we think of physics, we can describe almost the entire universe in about 20 models, 20 data points, 20 variables. And we have 10 trillion and nowhere near the expressive power of the type forms we have in physics. So all I'm trying to caution there is some inherent limitations, not something that you can't, the sort of stuff you can overcome just if you have more data. No, there is inherent structural issues with AI that cannot possibly get to human level of consciousness.
Right. Well, it's reassuring to hear that, Ajit, but I'm going to bring Harshit in here because, I particularly wanted you to say that to guardrail us because Ajit said it's very important to understand the problem so you frame it correctly before you become afraid of things that don't exist. But Harshit, at another level, there are also others, Lex Fridman, Elon Musk, Sam Altman himself, and Imad, who are talking about the latency of this. And like I said, I have used this to create these images. It is not just a statistical, some of the images we saw are very creative. Now, you have been engaging with the machine, with codes. Do you agree with him that this is just statistical? Are some of the images you've made, which we're showing on screen, are they statistical? Because this is not just coming out of a math. There's a new thing that is being created. So are you as gung-ho as him?
Yeah, I completely agree, actually, with what Ajit had to say.
Oh, that's a backfire.
Yeah, but I'll sort of build on that a bit. I think the key idea to try and understand is all these models work on what is called imitative learning. So they're imitating a certain amount of data that we fed into them. But that is not to discredit the scale at which this is happening now. And I think it's that scale and the combination of us sort of having this anthropocentric view of the world where we are sort of trying to assign meaning to these outcomes which we weren't really expecting, right? Like when you say that this image that you created had a certain impact on you, it was your sort of assertion of that impact on the image. So I think that is what is important to see here. And what that brings us back to the point is that as humans, we are very visual people, and we believe what we see very easily. We've been conditioned to do that. It's been for a revolutionary
I just want to tell the audience that every image you're seeing there is not real. None of these are real images.
The Pope didn't go partying, unfortunately, yet. But maybe in the metaverse at some point, where
so to come back to
blend in. But yeah, coming back to this point, so I think that's the mental model shift in some sense that we have to start making, where we do not accept images like these. Or
that's like what, wish fulfillment or what?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, things like these will be considered real when we first encounter them, right? And I think that sort of changing the default mode of consuming content to believe that you need to fact check everything that you're consuming, I think that's a major shift that's going to be needed moving forward. And how we're going to get there is going to be one of the key problems of our generation, I feel.
Karthik,
but the other side of it, though, so yes, you can say, yes, this is just statistical pattern matching. But the interesting question it brings up is how much of what we do is statistical pattern matching. It brings up very interesting questions about human creativity. What really is creativity? Because I think in the 80s, there was this sort of somewhat theoretical debate between people who followed the idea that the brain is basically a tabula rasa, a blank slate, and we learn everything we do just through experience, just through examples, just the way the AI learns, versus people who felt that their innate abilities in the brain. Like, for example, Chomsky believes that we have a natural, innate ability to learn language that's already hardwired into the brain. So what AI has really demonstrated is how far you can get with just statistical pattern matching. I mean, it's incredible that just statistical pattern matching can do all of this. I think that's amazing. And I think it asks deep questions about human creativity.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to...
Sorry. So if I might just come in, there's a question of the ability to explain one's behavior, the ability to explain one's work, the question of why, and then the question of pain and suffering. So I do deeply believe without pain and suffering, you cannot create art, period. I mean, you can imitate art, you can create something that looks beautiful, but you can't be expressive. That's my comment on art, but the comment on the capability of AI, unless it's explainable, unless it can ask the why question on its own, not my prompt, but ask myself, the self-doubt, the awareness, the abilities have inherent limitations. The ability of AI will have those inherent limitations.
Ajit, I'm going to come and ask you about healthcare, and I want to bring Amit in. We're already running out of time. But when you said this about, both the artists laughed. So there is this sense, I saw Sam Altman talking about creating humility. Lex Fridman asked him, can we teach this technology humility? The same way as you teach your children humility. So, Karthik, it comes back to you that how much of this is mirroring our neural networks, But, so I want to shift a little bit to bias. We're discussing all these things, but you have both been engaging with the idea of social consequence and bias. Whether governments control this, whether cultural biases exist, our children are using this. Somebody, already we are living in this atomic cells because we only receive what we like. Now, we are not even going to get 10 articles, we're going to get one article designed by somebody else. Have you thought about this and what impacts it'll have?
Yeah. And, sorry, yeah.
Just a very quick thing to make this very real for you guys. You guys should all, after this, sorry, I say you guys, you should all, after this session, go to mage as in magician.space. It's a free AI app that will allow you to create your own images. Type in princess. What are you going to see? You're going to see a little white girl with a white dress and a pink bow and a tiara. Why? It's because of the bias issue. It's because the data set the AI has been trained on is largely Western. So I think it's a very, very important issue because where are the marginalized, where are the representations of the cultures of marginalized people? Or even where are Indian representations? It's far easier for me to create something in the style of Dutch realism than it is for me to create a Tanjore, just simply because the AI has not seen enough Tanjores. So I think we owe it to ourselves to digitally document our culture and make sure that these websites, that these AI algorithms that are trained on all this data set includes a fair representation of everyone's culture. To talk about the bias issue.
Amit, I want to bring you in here. You're part of the European Union community of AI. You worked with SoftBank. I've already described the many things you've been doing. But UK just declared that they were going to create a national framework for AI. Because of this cultural bias, because of this power, each country is now going to want to use this as a tool. It is weaponry, it's armament. So what is the thinking going on in the European Union, for instance, about the cultural framework of how AI will be used? When you're adapting it to human behavior, how are you dealing with a robot in an Indian context and a European context? How are you training it?
That's a very interesting aspect because it has different dimensions. One is that how AI will be evolving while it is able to consider the cultural differences, and then at the same time how different cultures will be using or adopting to the AI. So again, I think there is still a need of bigger ecosystem creation and bigger framework which should be considering these as the key aspects and then start even driving or guiding the development as well as the implementation of AI in society. So personally, I have been also involved in a very interesting European Japanese funded project where we try to see that how Indian culture and then some part of European culture as well as Japanese culture, people from all these different cultural background, how the system which can be a layered architecture can be adopted in the response, in the generation of the response of different kind of people with whom it is interacting. But it is also still in work in progress. And I think that was one of the first projects at very large level in global level where we also try to incorporate some aspects of Indian culture which is already very diverse. So we really need good data set and also good representation of all the cultural diversity to really train the model to understand us better.
Thank you, Amit. You know, we're going to have to end this very soon, and I'm really sorry I've lost my glasses, so I'm not being able to read the questions that many of you have sent. But we can continue this conversation over dinner. I just wanted to say this thing about the culture that we were once speaking with a Japanese CEO of Stability AI, and the way our minds are going to be trained, because this is all invisible. You know, I mean, it's not like a robot sitting there where you know this is a robot. Thank you so much. And he said that every time he typed in Japanese CEO, because it was designed by a Western set of companies, he saw these like really tired looking, you know, I mean, and when I put in Indian, you get Native Americans with headgear, you know. So that's just at the laughable end of it, but we can all understand how this can be deployed, you know.
Yeah. Just one very quick comment. I think with this idea of bias, I think the idea of sovereignty also plays a huge role. And as a country, we are a culture of spoken sort of communication, right? And not very documented in terms of the cultural facets that we have. And I think that is something that really needs to play out in the coming few years, where we're creating data internally. And I mean, in the past, we've seen like when the whole Facebook internet thing happened, right? India did come up with regulations and stop that from happening. And I think that can very well be a framework where the government steps in for regulatory policies around things like ChatGPT so that there's a homegrown alternate which incorporates a much wider view of the Indian world.
Right. So I just want to end on this one question to both of you, which is that, has this redefined or made you rethink what it is to be an artist? You know, who is a human being?
That happens every day. So
Okay.
I think an artist
does it pop in your head when no one buys your art, or is it?
No, not quite tied to that, thankfully. But I mean, it's interesting, right? Like now everyone has a phone on their, like everyone has a camera on their phones, right? And that does not stop like lens-based art practices from continuing. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, like the nature of inquiry for an artist keeps evolving with how the medium evolves. And I think that is very critical. Like for me, at some point in the nascent stages of AI, it was about experimenting with the image making process and sort of seeing if I can use the statistical learning and deviate from it to create new aesthetics. And now that it's with everyone, I think that's fascinating. And I always support sort of this tools over techniques paradigm that if someone wants to do something, they should be able to do it. But for me, then it makes the question of, okay, what is the new thing that I want to really engage with in terms of AI? And I think that journey just continues.
Right. So, Karthik, I want to end with you this ethical dimension of what it is to be a human being and an artist. You know? That is this AI, whether it breaks the Turing test or not, where it already is, you know, because of the way it can be used, has it already come to that, you know, it has an ethical dimension already. What is your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, there are several ethical issues, really. I mean, if you think about intellectual property, for instance, right? So many of the artists who've spent their entire lives creating their styles, now the AI can immediately imitate their style in a flash. And I mean, honestly, the people that it affects are not, you know, your fine art, because fine art has its own sort of, you know, it's got conceptual elements. It's not just about how beautiful a picture is, but it's the illustrators, it's the graphic novelists, it's the web designers. their work, when it's cannibalized like that, when there's IP protection for the algorithm but not for individuals, there's an ethical issue. There's also an ethical issue of how we deal with this change. I think every dramatic change really has multiple components. One of it is you're shit scared. Like, your life is not going to be the same as it was before. And we have to face that. But the other is the fascination. I mean, what can this release us to do? I mean, if we effectively solve things like the potential unemployment crisis by things like universal basic income and so on, if we can reorganize our society to face the demand, to face the disruption brought about by AI, we can potentially also think about the ways we can find meaning in our lives, which will be very different from now. So every change has an element of fear and fascination. So I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. This is just like literally opening a shard of conversation because there's so many aspects of this. But it's been called Prometheus's fire. And I think for me, that's the biggest metaphor. Because it is going to be so prolific, I mean, every other power that we speak of, whether it's governments, corporates, or political power, it's owned by but here, everyone is going to have access to it, and no one knows who's designing it, So we're all going to be changed without our knowledge, and our relationships with each other will change. So that's just in the here and now, but so much else more can happen. Like I said, this was just to give us a spark so that we are not impacted on without us dialoguing with it. And so thank you very, very much. About what it means to be human is certainly in question on many other grounds, but now existentially. Harshit has a show called Existential, what it means to be post-human. And maybe that's a good starting point to start rethinking ourselves. So all of you, thank you very much. Ajit didn't get a chance to speak about healthcare. This is going to be infusing the way healthcare will move. Ajit has some very interesting thoughts on the limitations of it, even at the level of healthcare. But I'll leave you to look him up on Google, while Google still exists, and, go on our own journeys of inquiry and ignition. So thank you very, very much, all of you. And we'll take this conversation forward. Thank you. Next up, it was just fragments of conversation, but I hope it just opened new doors for us. But next up is a conversation which is very much in the here and now, with somebody who's at the heart of power as we recognize it. This is the Tamil Nadu finance minister, who is... It's nice when a political leader gets that kind of automatic claps,